All right, we'll say good morning. Let us begin. I want to begin by thanking our sponsor, our TALMUD Torah sponsors, for Shvat, to thank Mrs. Bracha Strimber for dedicating all the Shir and Joshos this month in memory of her husband, Avraham ben Kallman Eliezer Halevi. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD Torah, the Neshama will have an aliyah and the family a nechama. And we thank Avi Tobias for dedicating all the Shir and Joshos this month in honor of the daf, in honor of the shir, and we thank him for his incredible generosity. And obviously with that, let us begin. We have a magnificent, beautiful, and incredible journey ahead of us today. Today's daf is Chav Tes 29. We are picking up on Chav Chesam with Beis. We left off 15 lines up from the bottom. So let's remember again, we left off in the sugya concerning eulogies in a shul. And the Mishnah explained that halacha l'maisa only what we call a hespeda dirabim, right? A eulogy for the public can be held within a shul. So the Gemara was giving explanations. In others, it seems to be it's the type of hesped that would draw kind of communal attention. So the Gemara says, Reish Lakish sape lahu tzor b'mei rabbanon t'shchiach ba'arad Yisrael. So listen to this. Reish Lakish eulogized the particular Talmud Chacham who was often found in Eretz Yisrael, to have a tani hilchasa b'chaf dalid shurta. This is beautiful. He taught halacha to 24 rows of talmidim. 24 rows of talmidim. And how did Reish Lakish eulogize him? Amar v'ay chasra arad Yisrael gavra rabba. The land of Israel has lost a great man. Well, see, that was the hesped. The land of Israel has lost a great man. Hahu da'avetani hilchasa sifra v'sifri v'tosefta v'shachiv. There was another Talmud Chacham. He learned halacha, sifra, sifri, tosefta, and then he passed away. Asu v'amru Rav Nachman l'sapte. They came to Rav Nachman and they asked Rav Nachman to eulogize this particular Talmud Chacham. So lispedei mar Amar. So listen to this. Rav Nachman said, Heichi nispedei. How should I eulogize him? Should I say about him, Hayt son of the Mali Sifri, the Chaser? So what should I say? That the world is now lacking a basket full of Svarim. Now, both say this wasn't a compliment. Now look at Rashi just a moment. Hayt son of Mali Sifri, Eino ela kasal, Eino ela kisal, Shemaluhu Svarim, ve'im mevin mavisocha. Af shona halachos lo shimish tamid chachamim. So we'll say essentially what Rav Nachman was saying was this man possessed a lot of knowledge, but he didn't really know how to utilize it. In other words, he was like a basket filled with svarim. So a basket filled with svarim is very nice, a lot of svarim, but the knowledge is not necessarily practical. Now Rav Nachman attributed this to the fact that although this guy learned a lot of Torah, he was not mishtamish tamid chachamim. Right? He didn't spend a lot of time with tamid chachamim, with Torah scholars. And therefore, by definition, he had the knowledge, but really didn't know how to apply it. So Rav Nachman was reticent to go ahead and eulogize him because Rav Nachman felt that he wasn't really worthy of public eulogy. Shabbos says it's actually very profound. The Gemara says, "Tachazi mabei tikifei da'arad Yisrael lechasidei debavel." See the difference between the strong ones of Eretz Yisrael and the pious ones of Bavel. Shabbos say now what the Gemara is doing over here is contrasting Reish Lakish with Rav Nachman. Reish Lakish had such beautiful things to say about the Talmud Chacham who passed away, and yet Rav Nachman was so critical. Rashi says over here, Takifei da'arad Yisrael. Rashi says, Reish Lakish, Ta'aminu M'seches Yuma, Da'afilu b'hadi Rabba bar Chana lo mishtoi. Demad mishtoi b'hadi Reish Lakish, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, mechasidei Bavel. So the Gemara is contrasting. Look over here, the contrast. Look over here, the difference between the Talmidei Chacham of Eretz Yisrael and Bavel. In Bavel, they're so critical, and in Eretz Yisrael, they're so appreciative of the accomplishments of every individual. Very critical Gemara of Bavel. Tanan Hassam, the Gemara goes right there. Udishtamish b'taga chalif. One who utilizes the crown of Torah for his own personal benefit will pass away. Or literally again, chalif means literally will be removed. So the Gemara tells a story. Tani Reish Lakish, Zam Shtamish b'mish shona halachas kisur shel Torah. Reish Lakish says this really refers to someone who makes use of a Talmud Chacham. That if you have someone who learns halachas, right? Someone who's shona halachas, or actually shona halachas means teaches halachas, right? If you have someone who learns / teaches halachas, a Talmud Chacham, and you make use of that person for your own benefit, that's a bad thing. The Gemara tells the story. Va'amar Ula, L'shtamish inish before I get this started. L'shtamish inish b'man de tani arba, v'lo l'shtamish inish b'man de masni arba. It is better to make use of a person who has learned 4 out of the 6 sdarim of Mishnah than to go to make use of a person who has taught 4 out of the 6 orders. In other words, I will say that someone who learns is certainly an accomplishment, but someone who teaches is even a greater accomplishment. So Reish Lakish says over here, Ula says over here, if you have to make use of someone, better to make use of a person who learns but doesn't teach than to make use of a person who teaches Torah. So the Gemara says, Ki had Reish Lakish hava azal ba'orcha. Listen to this story. Reish Lakish was traveling. Mato urkima demaya. He came across a large body of water. Asahu gavra arkavea kasve. So there was a man there, and he offered to take Reish Lakish on his back. He offered to carry Reish Lakish across the pool of water. Amarle, so we'll say as they're going across, Reish Lakish makes conversation. Amarle karis. So Reish Lakish says to the man, tell me, do you read Chumash? Amarle karina, yeah, I learned Chumash. Tanis, do you learn Mishnah? Tanina, yeah, I learned Mishnah. Arba Sidrei Mishnah, and I've learned 4 orders, 4 out of the 6 Sidarim of Mishnah. 4 out of the 6 Sidarim Mishnah. Amar lei, pasalta lecha arba turi, v'ta'anta bar lokish akasveich. You've literally hewn out, you've taken for yourself 4 orders of Mishnah, and you carry Reish Lakish on your shoulders. Shadi bar lakisha b'mai. Quick, throw me down in the water. Reish Lakish was so upset that this guy had learned Torah, and Reish Lakish now was making use of him to carry him across the puddle of water. So Reish Lakish said, I didn't realize who you are, throw me down right now. Amar lei, necha da'ashma'inan lamar. No, it is good for me. I'm happy that I get the opportunity to serve the master, that I get to serve you, Reish Lakish. So the Gemara says, Ihaki, Reish Lakish says, well, Ihaki, if that's the case, that you're not going to put me down, Gamar mimi hamilsa. Let me teach you some Torah. So Reish Lakish thought that at least, if I'm teaching you Torah while you're carrying me, at least somehow it's a justification for utilizing your services, even though you have learned 4 out of the 6 orders of Mishnah. And what did he teach him? Dam Rabbi Zera, Benos Yisrael henechmiru al atzman. The Jewish women had been machmir on themselves. Shafilu ro'os tipas dam kechardal. Even if they see one little small bit of blood, literally like the size of a mustard seed, Yoshvos alav shivanikim. They observe 7 clean days because of a discharge of blood. I will say, we made reference to this halacha. Rashi explains this over here, that this has to do with the fact that halacha lamaisa, over the ages we have become less proficient in distinguishing between dam nida and dam zava. Remember again, 7 days woman is a nida, technically on a biblical level. 11 days after that, if she sees blood, that's not considered to be dam zivos, but rather again, that's considered to be dam nidos, but that's dam zivos, zava blood. But because, again, remember again, in Hilchos Nida, there are no 7 clean days. In Hilchos Nida, on a biblical level, there's just 7 days. 7 clean days, Shevanikim, is a din in Zivos, is a din in Zava. But because we have become less proficient in distinguishing between the 7 and 11 model, therefore Jewish women took upon themselves the chumrah that essentially whenever they see blood, they always observe 7 clean days. So Reish Lakish will say, why does he choose this halacha? The Gemara often illustrates this halacha as a simple halacha. A simple halacha, a straightforward halacha that doesn't really require any explanation. It requires a lot of explanation, right? As Rashi points out over here. But halacha, it's viewed as a simple halacha. So Reish Lakish wanted to teach this man a simple, straightforward halacha. A simple, straightforward halacha, and therefore again justifying the fact that he's making use of this man's services. Incredible. But it also tells you, I just want to point out over here how much emphasis the Gemara puts on the learning of Mishnayos as well. I would say it's really quite a beautiful thing. Remember, again, the Gemara keeps talking about a person who has mastered 4 out of the 6 orders of Mishnah. Remember, we live in a time where mastering Shas is possible. But remember, up until this generation, mastering Shas was possible for the elite. It was not possible for everyone. But Mishnayos was always considered to be a significant accomplishment that was within reach for everyone. Just pointing out over here, again, how we have the ability to really build ourselves up into the kind of people that the Gemara looks at as Talmidei Chacham. I think for many of us, we often don't think of ourselves as having the opportunity to become a real Talmid Chacham. But it's not true. It's within reach for each of us. And Halayu sheish bizocha. But the Gemara goes right to turn to the Be'elio. Beautiful Gemara. Kol hashona halachos muftach lo shehu ben olam haba. Wow. Whoever learns halacha. So I'll say there's a lot of plugs over here, right? We just had a plug for Mishnah Yomi. Obviously, we're learning Daf Yomi. Now, an important plug for Smichas Chaver. If you learn halacha, you have to learn halacha. It's not Smichas Chaver. Go learn Mishnah, right? Rabbi Venek Shir every morning, right? Go learn. You have to learn halacha. A person who learns halacha, muftach lo shu ben olam haba. He is promised that he has a portion of the world to come. Sheneh emar halichos olam lo. Atikri halichos ella halachos. We vocalize it as halachos. If a person learns halachos, olam lo. The world belongs to him. I.e., he has a portion in the world to come. I just want to point out, this is not like an esoteric Gemara. This is very simple and straightforward. Why is it that if you learn halacha, you get olam haba? Both sides, very simple. The only way to know what to do in life is to learn halacha. If I don't learn halacha, how do I know what to do? If I don't know what to do, then how am I getting olam haba? So it's a very straightforward Gemara. If a person learns halacha, they know how to live a proper life. And if I live a proper life, then in Eretz Hashem, I have a chilik in olam haba. Straightforward. Tan Rabbanon. Posek top of Chavtes. Beautiful Gemara. Mevatlin Talmud Torah. Lo tzas hamesolach nasas kala. Also, you are permitted to go and be mevatel Talmud Torah. Literally, again, to stop one's learning, to accompany the dead. Ulachnasas kala. Now, I want to point out, it's interesting, when we hear hachnasas kala, often we think about, that means like collecting money to marry someone off. That's not what it means in this context. Hachnasas kala, Rashi says over here, L'lavosa mi beis avia lebeis chupasa. Hachnasas kala literally means to accompany a kala to the chuppah. They used to go ahead and dance the kala from her father's home, ultimately again to the chuppah. It was a beautiful, beautiful idea. I just have to say, I had the great schos to be at a chasana yesterday with Nathan Franco. First time I ever heard him sing under a chuppah. Mamish, it's kedai to get married just to have Nathan sing under a chuppah. I'm just saying. Me'ein olam haba. Me'ein olam haba. The Gemara says as follows. So mevatlin Talmud Torah lo tzas hameis lachnasas kala. So we'll say, listen to this. So you're allowed to stop your learning, right? You're allowed to go ahead and literally stop your learning for achnasas kala levayis hameis. Amar Rabbi Tobias. Let's listen to this. They say Rabbi Tobias, shay mevatel Talmud Torah lo tzas hameis lachnasas kala. And I will say, so the Gemara says, they say Rabbi Tobias, that's what? He stopped shir, right? He was mevatel Talmud Torah to go ahead and accompany a kala or to accompany a person to a levaya. And I both say, when is this? When is this so? B'she'in sham kol tzarcho. Now, both this is very interesting. Now, think about this halacha for just a moment. If you're permitted to be mevatel Talmud Torah for a kala and for hotzah, so it's for a levaya, both say, then what does that effectively mean for the yeshiva system? Right? There's no shir. There's no shir. Every day there's a levaya. Every day. So I will say, so what does it mean when you can be mevatel it? Ultimately, again, when there's not enough people. So what it's talking about over here is if you know that there's someone getting married, and it's a very shvach attendance, right? In other words, that there are very few people, or there's a levaya, and there are very few people, then halacha l'maisa, halacha dictates that you stop your learning, and you go and accompany the dead, and you go and lahavdil accompany the kala. Aval yisham kol tzarcha in mevatlin. But again, if there are enough people, and they don't need you, then don't go. The kama kol tzarcha, and I will say this is very interesting. Now, how much is kol tzarcha? So the Gemara says, Amar Shlomo bar inya mishmei derav treser alfei gavri v'shisa alfei shipuri. So the requisite number of people is 12,000 men and 6,000 people blowing shofars. Okay. Va'amri no, it's not that much. Treser alfei gavri umineo shisa alfei shipuri. No, it's not 12,000 people plus 6,000 shofar blowers, but the 6,000 are within the 12,000. So it's not 18,000, it's only 12,000 people. 12,000 and 6,000 who are blowing shofars. So I will say, Ula Amar Kigon. So we'll say, so first of all, what does that mean? What does that mean? I will say, so effectively what that means is that halacha l'maisa, you're going to be going to every single levaya, right? You're going to, so we'll say, so I saw brought down a very beautiful idea. that what this says is every kala and every levaya deserves this outpouring, right? A Jew is so holy and a Jew is so special that literally, again, now the shofar blowing, by the way, is by the levaya. These to blow shofars by the levaya. Every levaya deserves this type of attention, and every chasana deserves this type of attention. Now, what it means is that halacha l'maisa, there's enough people. Let's say, you know how this is. Sometimes there's a chasana where there's just not a lot of people. So there's a mitzvah to be mevatel Talmud Torah for simchas chasan and kala. Sometimes there's a levaya where there's not a minyan. So there's a mitzvah to stop what I'm doing and to ultimately participate in that levaya. When you have this number of 12,000, 18,000, they will say what that's trying to highlight is the holiness of a Jew. That what does a Jew deserve at his levaya? He deserves 12,000 men, 6,000 shofar blowers. What does a kala deserve at her chasana? She deserves again an outpouring of people. But the idea is you look at the chasana, you look at the levaya, and you ask yourself, are there enough people there to make it mechubar? That's why you see over here, Ula Amar kigon dechaitzi gavri me'abula at sichra. So Ula says that for a levaya, that there are enough people ultimately again to fill the space between the gate of the city and the cemetery. We'll say ultimately often cemeteries, right, we're not inside the city proper, they are right outside the city. So we'll say it's a little bit more realistic. So Ula says enough people to go to make a procession from the gate of the city up until the cemetery. Rabbi said the idea is, and this is very important because sometimes we hear about a chasana, more often about a levaya that is not going to be well attended, and it's so important if we have person can to take the opportunity to make a difference to be there, even if halacha l'maisa I don't know the person. It's part of the mitzvah of levaya samis. Rav Sheshes Amar kinesinasa kach netilasa. I will say this is so profound. Reish Lakish says how many people should be at a levaya? Well, the truth is the taking of the Torah should be just like the giving of the Torah. Man nisinasa b'shishim revo. Just like when Hashem gave the Torah, there were 600,000 men. Af nitilasa b'samech revo. So to the taking of the Torah should be with 600,000 men. Rabbi say this Gemara is incredibly profound. The Gemara calls a levaya the taking of the Torah. Rabbi say how profound is that? How profound is that? There's the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai, and when a Yid leaves this world, when a Jew leaves this world, that's the Rebbe Shalom is taking back part of his Torah. I will say, what an incredible way to look at the dynamic of when a neshama leaves this world. A Jew leaves this world, there's an element of the Rebbe Shalom taking back his Torah. So therefore, Rav Shesha says, when the Torah was given, there were 600,000 men. When the Torah is taken, there should be 600,000 men. I'm going to both say, obviously, the idea, Hanimili, the Gemara says, when is this so that you need such a dramatic outpouring? Leman dekari v'tani, someone who learned Chumash and learned Mishnah. Aval leman demisni, less le shira. I will say, if somebody learned Mishnah, there's no shir. There's no shir. In other words, no amount of people can properly give them the correct amount of covet for their levaya. Incredible. Time B'Shem Yochai Omer, Bo Urei, Kama Chavim. Rabbi said this is a magnificent Gemara. Time B'Shem Yochai Omer. Rashbi says, Bo Urei, Kama Chavim Yisrael Fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. See how much Klal Yisrael are beloved before Hashem. Shebechol Makom Shegalu Shechina Imahen. Wherever we were exiled, the Shechina goes with us. We were exiled to Egypt, the Shechina went with us. Shneimar Haniglo Nigleisi LeBeis Avicha B'Yosem Mitzrayim. Galu LeBavel, we were exiled to Bavel. Shechina Iman, the Shechina was with us. Shneimar Lemanchem Shalachti Bavela Va'af Kishena Sidin Ligal. And when we are redeemed in the future, Shechina Iman, the Shechina is redeemed along with us. Shneimar V'Shav Hashem Elokecha Es Shavuscha. The pasuk doesn't say v'heshiv and Hashem will return, but rather Ela v'shav. Rather, both say v'shav Hashem means Hashem is going to return with us when we return from the exile. Melamed sha'Kadosh Baruch Hu shav imahen mibein hagolios. Ultimately, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes back with us from Bava. Which Shabbosai means that as we are in Galus now, as we are in the current diaspora, the Ribono Shal Olam is with us in the Galus. So the Gemara says something amazing. Bebavel Heicha. Tell me, in Bavel, where is the Shechina? In other words, we'll say if the Shechina is in the diaspora, in Bavel, Where in the diaspora can the Shechina be found? Rabosai, get ready for this. Amar Abaye, Bebe Knishta, the Hutzal, or Bebe Knishta, the Shaf V'Yasif. Ben Arda. Rabosai, first of all, even before, where is the Shechina found? In Shul. In Shul. Rabosai, in Shul is where the Shechina is found. See, Rabosai, we don't understand the power of what a Beis HaKnesses is. We think that a shul is just a place you come to daven, just a place, right? And the shul is literally, again, the place where the Shechina chooses to reside while it is here in Golus. In Mirz Hashem, when Mashiach comes and we have a Beis HaMikdash, and there's a Bayish Lishi Mehira B'Yamein, the Shechina will reside in the Kodesh HaKadoshim between the Kruvim. But until that point in time, the Shechina resides in our shul. The Gemara says, where does the Shechina reside? It resides Bebek Nishta, ultimately again, B'Hutzal, the shul in Hutzal, and the Bebek Nishta of Shaf V'Yasiv in Naharda. I will say, this is interesting. What's Shaf V'Yasiv? If you look at Rashi says over here, Shaf V'Yasiv, this is beautiful. He says, Ubana Yechanya, V'Siyaito, Yechanya Melech Yehuda. When Yechanya was with the first wave of exiles, when Yechanya was exiled by Nebuchadnezzar, so he built the shul in Naharda. And I will say, listen to this. What did he build it from? Me'avanim va'afar sheviu imahin begalusan. They brought stones and they brought dirt from Eretz Yisrael. And with those stones and with that dirt, they built the shul in Shaf V'Yasiv. L'kai mashenemar kiratzu avadecha es avaneha ves afri yichonenu. The pasuk can tell him, your servants want your stones, and ultimately they find favor in your dust. So I will say, they built this shul in Narda from the stones and from the dirt of Eretz Yisrael. I will say, there's a homachlokes, exactly what Shaf V'Yasiv means. Because Shaf sounds like destruction, Yasiv sounds like settled. So again, the Pashut reading of it was, this was the shul that they built after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. Others say that what it means, Maharsha brings this down, that perhaps in Galus it was destroyed and they rebuilt it. Okay, in any event, this is where the Shechina was. So profound. V'lo tema hacha v'hacha. We're saying it wasn't at both places at the same time. Ela zimnin hacha v'zimnin hacha. Sometimes it was by this shul in Hutzal, and sometimes it was in the shul of Shaf V'Yasiv. Amar Abaye, Tisili dichi marchikna parsa ailana umatzilna hasam. Abaye says that whenever I'm within a parsa, I will say, by the way, a parsa is 8,000 amas. Whenever I'm within 8,000 amas of one of these shuls, I always make sure to go in and daven, because that is where the Shechina is. So the Gemara says, Avua de Shmuel v'Levi Havu Yosef b'Kinoshta the Shaf V'Yasiv. So listen to this. The father of Shmuel was sitting in the shul of Shaf V'Yasiv ben Arda. Asya Shechina, they heard the Shrite, the Shechina came, Shamu Kol Riksha, they heard a sound, right? They heard like a stirring in the shul. Kamu, what happened? Kamu v'nafku, they got up and they left. Rav Sheshis Haviyaseh V'Knisha Shaf V'Yasiv ben Arda. So Rav Sheshis was sitting in the shul, in Shaf V'Yasiv ben Arda. Asya Shechina, the Shechina came, v'lo nafik, he did not get up. Now I will say, Rav Sheshis was blind, Rashi says. So he didn't get up. Maybe he didn't leave because maybe there was no one there to help him. In any event, he didn't leave, whatever the reason. Asu malachi asharis kamavasule. The malachi asharis came and they started bothering him because they felt it was inappropriate that he should stay in the shul when the Shechina was there. Amar lefanav ribono shel olam, aluv v'she'eno aluv, mi nitcha mipnei mi. So Rav Sheshes said, ribono shel olam, aluv. Aluv means the forsaken one. If one is forsaken and one is not forsaken, who has to get up in front of who? In other words, Rav Sheshes says, Hakadosh Baruch Hu, leave me be. Tell him to leave me alone. I'm blind and I'm in Galus. I'm blind and I'm in Galus, right? We'll say, so tell me, who's the one who is forsaken? Who's the one who should be displaced in front of who? So the Gemara says, Amar Lahu, Dibon Sham said to the Malachi Asharis, Shafkuhu, leave Rav Sheshes alone. And we'll say, get ready for this. Says the Gemara, we'll say, listen to these Gemaras. Ve'ehi lohem lemikdash ma'at. So we'll say, the pasuk says over here in Yecheskel, Ve'ehi lohem lemikdash ma'at. I will be for them for a mikdash ma'at, for a mini Beis HaMikdash, a Mikdash Ma'at, a little bit of a Beis HaMikdash. What does that refer to, a Mikdash Ma'at? Amar Rab Yitzchak, Elu, Bate Knesios, or Bate Midrashos, Shebe Bavel. They both say, what's the Mikdash Ma'at of Klal Yisrael? This refers to the shuls, and this refers to the Batei Medrash and Galos of Bavel. I both say, this is where the terminology comes from. When we refer to our shul as a Mikdash Ma'at, refer to a Beis Medrash as a Mikdash Ma'at, it's from the Pasuk in Yecheskel. And Akash Baruch Hu says it to Klal Yisrael, I took your Beis HaMikdash, but I will be there in your Mikdash Ma'at. In your little mikdash. What is a shul? A shul is a little bit, a shtik Beis HaMikdash. It's a little mitzvot, it's a spark of the Beis HaMikdash. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Zeh Beis Rabbeinu Shebe Bavel. So Rabbi Elazar also says, it's not just the shuls in the Batei Medrash, but it's any place from where Torah comes. So literally they said, it's the Beis Rabbeinu, it's the house of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, right? Or Beis Rabbeinu, I should say, in Bavel. Rashi says, not right, this is Rav, Rashi says, the house of Rav in Bavel. Darash Rava, my dichsiv Hashem ma'on ata yisalanu. What does it mean when it says Hashem? You have become a dwelling, an abode for us. First widest lines, Elu bate kneos yosu bate midrashos. And let's say, what is the abode of the Ribono Shel Olam? This is the Beis HaKnesses. This is the Beis HaMedrash. Shabbos says, so beautiful. We don't understand the power of a shul, the Mikdash Ma'at, the Ma'on. Amr Abaye, Meresh has this. Meresh havagar sina bebeisa umatzne beknishta. So Abaye says, I used to learn at home. I figured out I learn at home. It's easier to learn at home. It's more convenient to learn at home, right? It's nicer to learn at home. And again, I didn't think it was a big deal. And I would come to shul to daven. Or as I'd learn at home, and then I would come to shul to daven with the minyan. So matzah beknishta, kevan dishamis lahad de ka'amar David. Hashem ahavti ma'on beisecha. But once I heard the words of David HaMelech, Hashem, I love the abode of your home, which ultimately again refers to the shul, refers to the Beis Medrash. Havagarisna bebeknishta. I came to learn in shul. When I come to realize that the shul is not just a nice gathering place, and the shul is not just a place ultimately where I have tefillah b'tzibur, but that the shul is the Mikdash Ma'at. The shul is the abode of the Ribono Shel Olam. I said, you know what? I'm coming not just to daven there, I'm coming to learn there as well. Tanya Rabbi Elazar Akavar Omer, Asid, was so beautiful. Asidin bate knesios, ubate midrashos shebe Bavel, sheyikvuu be'eretz Yisrael. I will say, in Mashiach comes, the shuls, and Batei Medrash and Bavel. And I will say, whenever you hear Bavel refers to diaspora, right? It's not just Bavel specific. Remember again, that was their galus. But it means the Batei Knesios, the Batei Midrashos in Bavel, and Chutz La'aretz, sheyikvuu be'eretz Yisrael, will be uprooted and will be brought to Eretz Yisrael. I will say, so incredibly important. You should know. You think about this just a moment. We're embarking, Baruch Hashem, we have embarked upon a very ambitious building campaign. Person thinks about it for just a moment. Isn't that a chisaron in Emunah, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the Geula, that ultimately Mashiach is going to come? Why are we investing millions of dollars in Chutzah? So both say it is not an investment in a shul, is an investment in Eretz Yisrael as well. Because the day will come in Eretz Hashem when we complete our building, and that building is going to be uprooted by the Mashiach and brought to Eretz Yisrael. That's the investment. That's the Gemara saying over here. Such an incredible yesod. When we invest in religious infrastructure, in Chutz La'aretz, that infrastructure is going to come with us to Eretz Yisrael during the Yemos HaMashiach. So the Gemara says, Shnei Amar, Ki ketabor baharim uke karmel bayam yavo. Shabbos say, this is such an amazing Gemara. The Gemara is quoting the Pasuk from Yirmiyahu. Chai aninu om Hashem, elach Hashem tzavakos, kim ketavar baharim uke karmel bayam. Shabbos say, the Pasuk over here is talking about two mountains, Har Tabor, right, and Har Carmel. So the Gemara says, like Tabar and like Carmel, that have come across the sea. Now, what is that talking about? Right? When did Har Tabar, right, which also happens to have a beautiful and excellent winery, right? Har Tabar and Har Carmel, right? When do they come across the sea? So we'll say Rashi says something absolutely amazing. Look at Rashi. Ki Carmel bayam yavo lamanu sha'avar Carmel as hayam ve'masai b'shas matan Torah. Let's say, get ready for this. Har Tabar and Har Carmel cross the sea to be by Har Sinai during Matan Torah. The mountains crossed the sea to be by Har Sinai for Matan Torah. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Valo dvarim kavachomer, umat tavar v'karmel shelo ba'el lefi shalom al Torah nigvan b'Eretz Yisrael. So I will say Har Tavar and Har Carmel, which crossed the sea, just to be able to see Matan Torah, right? The mountains, Rabbi say, the mountains moved just to be able to see Matan Torah. They just wanted to be by Har Sinai, by Matan Torah, and yet they are re-established in Eretz Yisrael. Bate Knesios or Bate Midrashos, Shekorin, Umarbitzin Ban Torah Lachas Kama V'Kama. Then all the more so shuls and Bate Medrash, where there is such a proliferation of Torah each and every day, will be uprooted and replanted in Eretz Yisrael. To see that day Bekarov. Darish Bar Kafra, Mai Dichsiv Lamatiratztun Harim Gavnunim. Supposed to listen to this. Yosef Sabaskova Amra, Lama Tirtzu Dinim Sinai. Well, so now we mentioned Har Sinai. The Gemara says the mountains were upset that Har Sinai was chosen for the site of Kabbalah Satorah. So the pasuk says, mountains, why do you want judgment with Har Sinai? Kulchem Bali Mumin Eitzel Har Sinai. Or Eitzel Sinai. Ultimately, again, all of you mountains, you're all blemished when compared to Sinai. How so? Ksiv hacha gavnunin. It calls the mountains gavnunim, right? Great, great mountains. Ksiv hasam ogibein odak. They both say gibein odak. These are blemishes that disqualify a coin from doing the avodah. What do you see from here? Amravashi shmamina. Both say gavnunim. Therefore, says mountains, mountains. Ultimately, in your gavnunim. Now, again, in the context of mountains, gavnunim means haughty, right? Gibein ultimately is one of the blemishes which disqualifies a Kohen. It's the same word. What do you see from here? That arrogance is a blemish. Right? All of you mountains, you are blemished because you possess arrogance. You think you're so great, and therefore you think you deserve to be the site of Matan Torah, but in fact you're blemished. Rabbi said, Ravashi says, Shmamina. Rabbi said, this is incredible. Hai man diyohir, someone who is arrogant, bal mumhu. Rabbi said, arrogance is a mum. Arrogance is a blemish which disqualifies a person from accomplishing greatness. Ein osinos al kapendaria. Let's back to the Mishnah. We don't make a shul shortcut. My kapendaria, Amarav, kapendaria kishma, my kishma, the Amar Amid Adimakifna Adare Eyu Baha. Was it just like a person say, instead of going around, Adimakifna, instead of going around, Adore I'll go straight. So I'll say kapendaria is a contraction between those two words. It means a shortcut. You can't make a shul a shortcut. I'm Rabbi Avo. Listen to this. However, let's say Rabbi say there was a path, and the path preceded the building of the shul, and then they built a shul on top of the path. You can still take the path, even though the path is effectively a shortcut to the shul. If the path preceded the shul, you can still take the path. If you walk in, not with the intention of making the shul a shortcut, you can then afterwards utilize the shul as a shortcut. If you walk into the shul to daven, you can make it a shortcut. It's very important that the idea is, when can't you utilize the shul as a shortcut? When that is your express intention. That's the only thing you're doing. But if you're coming into the shul and you're doing something purposeful, you're davening, you're learning, once you've come into the shul for purposeful purpose, right? Once you've come into the shul for something purposeful, then afterwards you are permitted to go ahead and utilize it as a shortcut. Beautiful. If grass grew in the shul, don't uproot it because it causes pain, like we saw in yesterday's daf. But the Bracha says you can't uproot it to feed it to animals, but you can uproot it just to leave it there. You're right. The Mishnah is talking about a case where you're uprooting it and feeding it to your animal. That you can't do. Both saying in a cemetery, you cannot act in a lightheaded or jocular fashion. So the Gemara says, furthermore, you can't allow animals to graze in a cemetery. You can't channel water through it either. And you can't gather grass in a cemetery. If you did, you should burn it in place. Why? Out of honor to the dead. So we'll say, what is that last phrase? What do you mean? You burn grass out of honor for the dead? What does that mean? Ahiyah, what does it refer to? My covered mason mika. But understand, if you pick grass and you burn it in place, that's covered mason. Ella aresha. The other will say, no, that last phrase actually is attached to the first phrase, namely, a noagin kalas rosh bebeis hakvaras. You cannot act in a jocular or lightheaded fashion in a cemetery. Why? Mipnei kavod hames. Ultimately, again, out of kavod hames, out of honor. I will say, it's very important to know, sometimes even out of Levi, I've often thought, you see this in Eretz Yisrael, but you don't really see it here in America as much. Sometimes when in all seriousness, when they're filling in the kever, right? So what often happens is, you have, 5 shovels, and people are standing around. Often there's so much kalas rosh that happens during that time. In Eretz Yisrael, you see it very often that you don't see it. They sing at Levias, right? They sing very meaning. I think it's kedai to introduce it here in Minhag America as well, because what ends up happening is you take a very serious introspective moment, and because everybody's kind of just standing around, literally it's filled with small talk. Nothing bad, but it's just literally you hear the chatter of people. So maybe kedai for us to emulate Achinu b'Yisrael, and during a levaya to sing, especially during those moments where they're filling in the kever, to make sure that the entire experience, number one, is one of Kovid Rosh and one of incredible Isra. So both say, there is no better time for introspect and Cheshbon HaNefesh than a levaya. Maybe kedai for us to look at ways to make the event a little bit more meaningful and impactful. Mishnah says the Mishnah. We'll say Rosh Chodesh Adar. We'll say Daled Parshas. Rosh Chodesh Adar Shechalios b'Shabbos. We'll say now we're going to remember again the 4 supplemental readings. Rosh Chodesh Adar Shechalios b'Shabbos. When Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbos, Korin b'Parsha Shkolim. So we'll say first, remember again the first of the 4 additional readings that we have is Parsha Shkolim. So if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on a Shabbos, we'll read Parsha Shkolim on the Shabbos of Rosh Chodesh Adar. Chalios Psach HaShabbos. What happens if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls out during the week? Then Makdim l'Shabbat. The Rebbe say we read Parsha Shkolim on the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar. Umafsikin l'Shabbos acheres. And then the Shabbos afterwards, we'll have a quote unquote, there's a break. Because remember again, the next thing we read is what? Parsha Zachar, and that's not read until the Shabbos right before Purim. Bishniya, the second supplemental reading is Zachar. Bishlishis, which is at the War of Amalek, that's read right before Purim. Shlishis, the third one is Para Aduma, Para Aduma. Bereviis HaChodesh, Bechamishis Chosin L'Kesidron. In the 5th week, we go back to the normal reading of Kriyas HaTorah. Lakom Afsikin, so also in general, we disrupt the normal reading of Kriyas HaTorah for all special occasions. Beresh Chadoshim, Bechanukah, Purim, Ta'anios, Ma'amolos Yom Kippurim. Now remember again, each of those days have a different impact. For example, when Yom Kippur falls on Shabbos, we don't read the regular Parshas Shavua at all. We just read the Kriya of Yom Kippur. But yet these other examples, Rosh Chodesh, Chanukah, Purim, these are all good examples of where what? We read supplemental readings. We read the regular Parashas HaShavua, but we'll add on additional readings. That's when it says mafsikin just means we disrupt the normal order. Tanan Asam, Be'echel B'Adar Mashkin Ala Shkalim. The Rebbe said, let's analyze. Why do we read Parsha Shkalim on the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar? There's good reason. Because again, on the first of Adar, Mashmin Ala Shkalim, Rosh Chodesh Adar is when Beis Din makes the announcement to collect the new Machzis HaShakar. Let's remember this from our Shkalim days. Amid days, V'ala Klayim. And I will say they also announce about Kilayim. Now look at actually, what is Kilayim? Lakor Klaya Azra Mani Kar Menatzvah. I will say, remember again, by Rosh Chodesh Adar, you already have growth in the field. So Rosh Chodesh Adar, they already tell the people, look in your fields to see if there's any Kilayim, any forbidden growths. Remember again, Beis Din will also dispatch messengers to see about Kilayim. So we'll say on Rosh Chodesh Adar is when we begin to announce, get ready to bring your new half shekel for the new year. Because of that, on the Shabbos, either right before Rosh Chodesh Adar or on Rosh Chodesh Adar, if Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbos, we'll read Parsha Shkalim. So the Gemara says, Ela ala Shkalim inolan. How do we now? Bishlam ala Kilayim dismanzriye. Now I understand why in Rosh Chodesh Adar they announce about Kilayim, because that's already the time that they're planting, and even there's already some growth. Ela ala Shkalim inolan. But I will say, why do we announce? Remember, when do you need Machzis HaShakal by? You need it by Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Why are they announcing it by Adar? Amrab Tevi, Amrab Yishaya, the Amar Kra, Zos Olas Chodesh B'Chad Shal. I will say, the pasuk says this is the Olah of the Chodesh in its month. Amra Torah, Chadesh v'Havei Karban Mikarban B'Tshuva Chadasha. I will say that every Nisan you have to replenish the temple coffers, and that the Karbanos Sibor, the communal offerings, should be brought from the newly collected funds. Truma Chadasha. The Chevan de B'Nisan ba yakruvim et Truma Chadasha. And since on Nisan, you need to go ahead and bring from what we call the Truma Chadasha, the newly collected funds, Kadminon Vikarinon Be'echad Ba'adar. We got to say, so in order to collect new funds from Klal Yisrael, Rabbi say, if you need that by Rosh Chodesh Nisan, then what? You need to give people time. So when do they make the announcement about the shkalim? When do they make it? Rosh Chodesh Adar. This way you give people a full month to go ahead and collect and transfer their new half shkalim to the mixer. Let's take a quick look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Ela Amris Torah, Yesh Lecha Chodesh, Shata Tzarech Lechadsho Bavasa. So we'll say, this is the drasha. The pasuk says, Zos Olas Chodesh Bichadsho. There is a month, there is a Chodesh, where ultimately, again, Chodsho, there is a renewal of funds. And which is the month where there is a renewal of funds? So there's a whole drasha, ultimately we saw in Rosh Hashanah, that we identified that month is Nisan. Because by Nisan it says, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chadashim. Chodesh B'Chadsho, Nisan is the month that's called the Chodesh, and therefore the renewal month is Nisan. So because we need to replenish the temple funds, ultimately again on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we have to give people a heads up, we have to give them time. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, we make the announcement on Rosh Chodesh Adar, that way the new shkalim get there in time for Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Beautiful. To which the Gemara says, Kiman, to look Rabbi Shimon. Not like Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, why not? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Hamar Shtei Shabbosos. But Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says in general, you don't need to give people 30 days to get something done. People only need 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Where do we see this? From this Sanya, Sholem Behilchos HaPesach Kodon HaPesach Shloshim Yom. The Tanakhama says, general, we'll begin to learn the halachos of Pesach 30 days before Pesach. No, you don't need 30 days. Rather, what do you need? 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Shabbosai. Now, the same Rabbi Huda who says you only need 2 weeks to get ready for Pesach will also say what? You only need to give 2 people 2 weeks to get in their new shkalim. So therefore, according to Rabbi Huda, when should you make the announcement about the new shkalim? When? 15th of Adar. 2 weeks. To which Gemara says no. I feel the Rabbi Yishmael Gamliel. Kevan Daramar. Bechamisha asar bo shulchanos Yoshim Medina. Both say first wide line. Ubechav hey Yoshim Mikdash mishum shulchanos kadminon vikarina. No, both say even according to Rabbi Huda, because remember again. First of all, not everybody has a half a shekel. So what would happen on the 15th of Adar? Money changers would begin to set up their tables. So because the money changers are starting on the 15th, 2 weeks before, even Rabbi Huda would agree that what? You'd want to make the announcement for the people 2 weeks before the money changers start. So if you want to make the announcement 2 weeks before the money changers starts, that puts you at where? Rosh Chodesh Adar. So everyone is agreeing that you begin the announcement on the Machzis HaShekel on Rosh Chodesh Adar. So I will say, now, fine. So now I will say, now we've established, now here's what I understand. Now I understand why Parsha Shkalim is done either on Rosh Chodesh Adar that falls on Shabbos, or what? The Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar. Let's say, look what the Gemara says. By the way, my Parsha Shkalim, what's Parsha Shkalim? Right, what is that? So this is great. Rav Amar, second one line, I will say, Shabbos b'nei Yisrael Amar Talem is Karmani Lachni. This is interesting. Rav says, Parsha Shkalim, will say, is the Parsha that ultimately, again, we know as the Karban HaTamid. Right? Shabbos b'nei Yisrael Amar Talem is Karmani Lachni li'ishai. Tishmeru lach living wado. So we'll say this is the pasuk of Karban HaTamid. I remember again, this goes into Parshas Rosh Chodesh, everything else as well. So Rav says that ultimately again, Karban Shkalim is the pasuk. Ultimately again, is the parsha of Tamid, which goes into Parshas Rosh Chodesh. Okay, Ushmuel Amar no Kisisa. What's Parsha Shkalim? The beginning of Parshas Kisisa, which speaks about what? The mitzvah of Machzis HaShekel. Bishlam Alaman Damar Kisisa, Hainu Dekarli Parsha Shkalim, Dichsiv Veshkalim. So I understand Shmuel's position that Parsha Shkalim Rabosai is what? Is actually Parshas Shkalim, the beginning of Parshas Kisisa. That's why you call it Parsha Shkalim, because Rabosai speaks about the taking of the half shekel. Elaman Damar Shkalim Lach Midi Shai, Hacha Midi Shkalim Ksivi. I don't say, but Rav, you who say that it's the portion of, that it's the parsha of the Tamid with Rosh Chodesh, it doesn't even talk about Shkalim. So, well, why is that called Parsha Shkalim? To which the Gemara says, Hasam in time, Midi Shkalim Ksivasam in Taima Mai. So the Gemara says, Taima Mai Kid Rabbi Tavi. Oh, Rabbi goes like Rabbi Tavi, because what does Rabbi Tavi say? Rabbi Tavi says, Rabbi say, that ultimately, again, it says, Zos Olas Chodesh Bichadsho. That section contains the pasuk that reminds us that what? There's an obligation to renew the temple coffers every single Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And how do you renew the temple coffers on Rosh Chodesh Nisan? With a collection of the Machzis HaShakel. Sefer Rabosai, because the pasuk of Zos Olas Chodesh Bechadsho is contained in that larger paragraph, that's why it's called Parsha Shkalim. Shabbos say fundamental machlokes. What is Parsha Shkalim? So Bishlam the man that Avi Strimber so Mishum Dechsidi Karbanos Hasam Kiravi Tavi. Shabbos say I understand now. I understand Rav's position. He likes Savis Bnei Yisrael. He likes that Parsha because that Parsha contains the pasuk of Rabbi Tavi Zos Olas Chodesh Bichadsho, which is the pasuk that is the source for the renewal of temple funds with the newly collected Machzis HaShekel every Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Elamandamar Kisisa Karbanos Miksivi. Rabbi said, this is very interesting. Now the parsha of Kisisa, Rabbi say, it is true that it speaks about the collection of the half shekel. But Rabbi say, that collection of half shekel, was it for Karbanos? No. Shkalim la'adonim Ksivi. Rabbi say, the half shekel collection in the beginning of Parshas Kisisa, Rabbi say, it was done for what purpose? One for what purpose? For the silver sockets. Very interesting. The Machzis HaShekel in the beginning of Parsha Kisisa was not for communal offerings. It was for the silver sockets. Kiditani Rav Yosef, the Gemara says, no, explain this to Rav Yosef, says, Shalosh Trumosein. Rav Yosef, there are 3 collections. Now the Torah says the word Truma 3 times in the beginning of Parshas Kisisa. Why 3 Trumos? So the Gemara says, Shalosh Trumosein. Shal Mizbeach le Mizbeach. Rav said there was a collection for the Mizbeach, which was what? Was for Karbanos. Vishal Adonim la'adonim. There was a collection for the sockets. That one for the sockets. Vishal Bedek Habayis leBedek Habayis. And ultimately, again, one for Bedek Habayis, what we'll call for temple upkeep. Now Rashi says, we're not getting right. One for Bedek Habayis. So both say. So the point over here is that even in Parshas Kisisa, the Torah makes reference to 3 collections. One for the sockets, one for Bedek Habayis, and one for Karbanos. Therefore, again, Parshas Kisisa contains a reference to Machzis HaShekel and to a collection for Karbanos. Bishlam Damar Kisisa Hainu Deshani Hayrosh Chodesh Misharosh Chadoshim. So we'll say, now listen to this. If you say that Parshas Kisisa ultimately is what? Sorry, if you say that Parshas Shkalim is Parshas Kisisa, in that respect, Parshas Shkalim is different than a regular Rosh Chodesh. My shani. Right? So I will say, now listen to this. Here's the problem. If you say that Parsha Shkalim, like according to Shmuel, is ultimately Savis Bnei Yisrael Amar Talmud Kamani Lachmi, I will say that's the same Kriya as what? Rosh Chodesh. So it turns out that the Kriya for Kisisa is the same thing as the Kriya for Rosh Chodesh. Shani di'ilu Roshei Chadashim Karei Shisa Binyan Yom V'cha Rosh Chodesh. Here's the difference. On a regular Rosh Chodesh, you read 6 aliyos from the regular parsha and 1 aliyah for Rosh Chodesh. Right? We do it a little bit differently. Vilo ha'inno kulu b'di Rosh Chodesh. So also listen to this. So the Gemara is suggesting, or the distinction will be that on Parsha Shkalim, ultimately again you'll read all 6 aliyos, or you'll read 6 aliyos from the Parsha of Rosh Chodesh. Okay? So I will say, so the difference would be is how you arrange the aliyos on that Shabbos. Hanichaman damar, let's say the Parsha Yosu Chozer. So we'll say this makes sense according to the opinion. It says that after the supplemental aliyos, you go back to the regular order of Parshios. Elaman damar, let's say the Haftaros Chozer. Uparshasa diyoma karina ma'ishani. But according to the opinion, it says that halacha l'maisa, you always read the same parshas, you just vary up the Haftaros. Right? But the Parsha Diyoma is the same. How do you make a difference between Parsha Shkalim and Rosh Chodesh? Shani di Rosh Chadashim karushisa binyan Diyoma. V'chad kari b'di Rosh Chodesh. Here's the difference. On regular Rosh Chodesh, ultimately, again, you'll read 6 aliyos in what we call the Parsha Shavua, and 1 Rosh Chodesh. V'lo ha'idna but on Parsha Shkalim, Karutlasa B'inyan Diyama, you'll read 3 aliyos of the Parsha Shavua, V'arba Karu B'Rosh Chodesh, and 4 aliyos ultimately in the Kriya of Rosh Chodesh. Fine. So again, remember, the Gemara is just asking, in the opinion of Shmuel, where essentially Parsha Shkalim looks the same as Parshas Rosh Chodesh, they would just divide up the aliyos differently on a Shabbos Shkalim that fell on Rosh Chodesh as well. So may say the Gemara is the Kasha, Rosh Chodesh Adar Shchalios b'Shabbos, when Rosh Chodesh Adar falls on Shabbos, Karn b'Parsha Shkalim, Umaftirin b'Yehoyada. We're going to stop over here for today. Now I want to ease your concerns. Right? We're going to pick up at this Meisei. I will say, you'll notice by the way we're finishing in Meretz Hashem Parshas Maseches Megillah this week. Last daf of Megillah is only in Amud Aleph. He's only in Amud Aleph, so we are good to go. That's why we're not going to rush through everything. We're going to pick up. I will say, so just don't say where we're leaving off. We're just leaving off in the midst of this dramatic machlokas. What is Parsha Shkalim? Is Parsha Shkalim the first section of Parshas Kisisa, or is it essentially the same kriya as we have by Rosh Chodesh? We're going to continue with that discussion and get to the halacha l'maisa tomorrow. Shkayach everyone.